Hello, and thank you all for coming. My name is Joshua Coleman, and I'm a senior in the Interdisciplinary Studies program here at Embry-Riddle. Welcome to my Senior Thesis Defense presentation entitled Smashing Prejudices, Integrated Education as a Method of Conflict Management in Bosnia. Before I begin, I wanted to give a special thank you to my thesis director, Dr. Tator, for all of your guidance and insight throughout this process, and for honing my writing abilities in the way that you have. I also wanted to thank all of the professors who were willing and able to take the time out of their incredibly busy schedules to conduct these interviews. This quite literally wouldn't have been possible without you all. With that being said, let's begin. Previous semesters, I researched the causes of the Bosnian War that occurred in the wake of the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991. I also analyzed the American-led NATO intervention that ended the war and brought the Bosnian Muslims, Croats, and Serbs to the negotiating table. While the 90-day NATO bombing campaign of Sarajevo was effective in crippling the Serbian and pro-Serb forces into submission, the reality was that they were forced into negotiations by external forces, making the parties bitter and resentful. The negotiators who led efforts to draft a peace agreement between the warring parties were rightly concerned with ending the hostilities as quickly and efficiently as possible. While their efforts did in fact end the war through the Dayton Agreement in 1995 that simultaneously created a Bosnian constitution, they failed to address the underlying causes of the Bosnian War, virtually guaranteeing renewed ethno-religious conflict in the future. This failure led me to ask, why are ethnic tensions still high after 27 years? What were the original peace-building goals of the 1995 Dayton Agreement? If rearward-facing reconciliation efforts failed, what alternative methods could be implemented that focus on the future rather than the past? And are there any case studies that have overcome deep-rooted ethnic division through domestic grassroots movements? I took these questions and hypothesized that the heightened tensions between the Bosnian Serbs, Croats, and Muslims could be relieved through a state-sponsored integrated education system that fosters an environment of intergroup contact and trust building. My research relied heavily on Gordon Allport's 1954 essay, The Nature of Prejudice, in which he developed the so-called contact hypothesis. He stated that it is easier to smash the atom than a prejudice, and insisted that a prejudice, unlike a common misconception, is actively resistant to all evidence that would unseat it. According to his hypothesis, properly managed intergroup contact could lead to a decrease in prejudice and negative stereotyping between identity groups. To conduct a proper review of the literature about this topic, I had to pull from a wide variety of writing from experts in the areas of both Bosnia and Herzegovina as well as Northern Ireland, with a special focus on the conflict resolution methods and social psychology. The primary area of interest for this study was the Dayton Peace Agreement that ended the Bosnian War in the first place. As I said, the American-led NATO intervention was absolutely critical in bringing the warring parties to the negotiating table, but I was more interested in the areas of the agreement that focused on the future rather than the past. What I found was that they missed a key opportunity to build a national identity of which all religious groups could be a part, and promoted a segregated societal structure in an attempt to allow time for the wounds of war to heal. I had to know more about the years after the war and the attempts at reconciliation. I learned that even though truth and reconciliation was the time's popular method for resolving conflict in post-war states, it was no silver bullet that solved the problems of all cases. In total, 6 different attempts at creating such a commission were shut down because of international donors' preference for criminal trials of those responsible for the genocide, and because of the lack of the need for truth, as the war crimes that were committed in the public eye and on the world stage. Focusing in on the criminal trials, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia was created with the goal of reconciling with the bloody past through retribution and restorative justice measures. However, the segregated societal structure impeded its ability to build trust between the different religious groups that were involved in the conflict. With a greater understanding of Bosnia and Herzegovina's case, I set out to learn more about Northern Ireland and its attempts at trust building and reconciliation following their long internal struggle known as the Troubles. While their system isn't perfect, and it's a source of contention even today, The system of integrated education there has been proven to alleviate some of these tensions. Furthermore, multiple civil society programs have been created with the goal of building communal trust. The Ulster Project is the most widely known about and researched, which places Catholic and Protestant teens in sponsor homes here in America to learn and grow together over the course of a summer. The program has led to an increase in intergroup friendships and marriages, and according to the people that took part in the program, it has completely changed their opinion of the other. With a better understanding of the written literature regarding these topics, I began to think of ways that I can conduct some primary research and contribute something new to the case of Bosnia. Because my topic was so particular and required expert knowledge and opinion, I came up with the idea of interviewing Embry-Riddle's Security Studies and International Affairs professors in a semi-structured format that would allow for follow-up questions and further expansion. On the right side of the current slide, you'll see a list of questions that were asked during the interviews. Once I identified the experts and sent them this list of questions to prepare, the interviews were conducted, recorded, and transcribed for reference later. Once I compiled all the data from the interviews, their responses were analyzed for recurring themes and opinions that would either prove or disprove my original hypothesis. Even though each of the professors provided their own unique opinion and insights to these questions, one recurring theme in their answers was a need for local grassroots initiatives rather than the state-mandated top-down approaches. In addition to this unified perspective, other conclusions were also drawn depending on the educational background of the individual professor. For instance, post-genocidal states are plagued with a lack of communal trust between different ethnic or religious groups, making imposed top-down approaches fail. Women and children are often better integrated into grassroots movements, which is crucial given their position within society as agents of both change and trust. Additionally, international actors rarely possess the knowledge of the culture that is required to enact lasting peace or change, making their efforts weak and temporary. And while education can and has been historically weaponized to promote intergroup violence, it can also be employed to create environments that promote tolerance and acceptance of differences. With the interviews completed and the responses analyzed, I created this word cloud to represent the most prevalent ideas and opinions within their answers. Grassroots movements took center stage, followed closely by education, trust, and prejudice. The experts unanimously agreed that grassroots movements that focus on integrating education and reducing intergroup prejudice are the best way forward for post-genocidal states. While there have been protests and rallies among the people in support of integrated education in Bosnia, the militarization of police and corrupt system of governance hinder these efforts. Here we see an example of the two schools under one roof policy, in which Bosnian Muslim and Croat children attend school in the same building, but they're separated into different wings, classrooms, and play areas. This fence has been torn down since this picture was taken, but education in Bosnia is still segregated in the majority of cantons, with only a few notable exceptions. As if the autonomy of the 10 cantons doesn't complicate the issue of integrating education in Bosnia enough, there are 14 independent ministries of education. This highly fractured system breeds bureaucratic chaos and freezes the reconciliation process in the past. Making matters worse is the lack of uniformity in curriculum among Bosnia's 8 different state-funded public universities. This causes many students to fail in meeting the most basic educational requirements. Additionally, the two schools under one roof policy plagues Bosnia to this day, where 56 of its public primary education institutions remain segregated according to the student body's religious affiliation, regardless of the fact that they speak the very same language. Because the education system remains one of the least reformed sectors of society within Bosnia and Herzegovina, and because education plays a vital role in the representation and understanding of the other, I personally recommend an amendment of the original Dayton Agreement to include state-sponsored integrated education efforts that are based on the demographics of each of the 10 cantons. The draftees of the original agreement were rightly concerned at the time with ending the hostilities as quickly as possible, but they failed to address the possibility of renewed ethnic conflict that could manifest itself through prejudice and negative stereotyping that is often a direct result of segregation. To alter this catastrophic outcome, Local policymakers in each of the 10 cantons should create initiatives that would encourage intergroup extracurricular activities and desegregate the educational system within their jurisdictions. Using a combination of Allport's 1954 contact hypothesis and the Northern Ireland Ulster Project, policymakers in Bosnia must target the lowest levels of society with their integration efforts to have the greatest impact. These local initiatives will increase intergroup contact in a controlled environment that will aid in the rehumanization of the other, restore communal trust, and teach tolerance of religious differences. This process should be relatively easy, given the fact that each of the religious majority groups speak the same language and can communicate clearly and effectively with one another. While the local governments take charge in these reintegration efforts, the federal governmental body of Bosnia and Herzegovina should be very careful of sweeping reforms from the top down, as they do tend to lead to misunderstandings and sow further division among the people. Grassroots efforts are proven to be more effective in garnering support and solidarity, so those are the efforts that should be emphasized. Additionally, secondary education programs should be implemented that encourage intergroup contact in college classrooms, because those students are in unique situations that have them removed from the comforts of their local in-groups. This means that statistically, they're more likely to accept and tolerate the differences of others rather than feeling reassured in their own prejudice and in-group bias. Finally, even though this research is directed at the broken educational system of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the knowledge that has been extrapolated from this case study can be applied to any state experiencing internal ethno-religious conflict. It is my recommendation that all future peace accords, regardless of geographical location or geopolitical influence, should include a component that focuses on the education and reintegration of society. If the Dayton Accords of 1995 had included an amendment dedicated to the integration of the Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs, the tensions between them may not have remained high to this day. Both the Bosnian War and Northern Ireland's time of the Troubles are well outside of the majority of young people's working memory, so the time for restorative or retributive justice measures has come and gone. Additionally, in the case of the Bosnian War, the lack of a victor and the wide disparity in opinions of who was the victim and who was the perpetrator has created an environment that is directly counterproductive to reconciliation. Furthermore, the widely publicized nature of the human rights atrocities that took place during the Bosnian War effectively negates the need for the type of truth-seeking found in Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. Instead of the popular rearward-facing techniques of the past, future efforts at trust-building in post-genocidal states like Bosnia and Herzegovina should be directed at the future with the goal of altering people's perception of the other. Through the integration of education and other grassroots movements for extracurriculars, Bosnian Serbs, Muslims, and Croats could increase their chances of a future without prejudice and renewed ethno-religious conflict. As actors on the international stage, states called upon to mediate in peace agreements in cases of internal ethno-religious conflict should analyze cases like Bosnia and Herzegovina to understand that segregation is a temporary solution that ultimately makes matters worse. The long-term integration of education has proven to be a successful method of conflict management and trust building between parties. Although I'm content with the culmination of my undergraduate research studies through this thesis, I would like to continue my research of the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina through a master's degree program that would allow me to travel there and interview Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs to know more about the realities of the opinions of people on the ground. This would be critical in the continuation of this research. And while I have thoroughly enjoyed the process of developing this thesis, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to defend my perspectives today. With all of that said, I would like to now open the floor for questions. Thank you all so much for your attendance, and I hope that you enjoyed the presentation and learned something today. Thank you.